Okay, great. Well, it's my privilege to introduce one of our Hog Island Scholarship recipients. Most of you who have been involved with Boulder Audubon know that we try to send 2 teens to Hog Island Audubon Camp in Maine every summer. And our speaker tonight was able to make that trip, and we're happy to announce that he's going to talk about his experience. This is Peyton Jackson from Pagosa Springs, who we awarded a full scholarship to last summer, and he went to Hog Island. And Peyton lives in Pagosa Springs. He's a senior in high school. He's due to graduate in January. Yay for you, Peyton. Yay, because you'll have the spring off. Is that right? Uh, Peyton loves to not only bird watch, he got into bird watching from his middle school teacher who introduced him to birding. And I think that's a great opportunity for teachers to introduce their kids to birding. And I thank that particular teacher for doing that. Peyton also likes to fly fish and run. He's also an Eagle Scout, and he's looking forward to attending Ames College after he's graduated, and hopes to get a welding certificate, and hopes to get a job eventually as a metal fabricator. Wow. I can just hardly wait to see what you're going to come up with, Peyton. And best wishes to you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll just jump in if that's all right. Awesome. So this picture is of the Queen Mary on Hog Island. When you pull up, you see the island across the bay, which is really awesome. And then you take this ferry across it, and we actually got to stay in the Queen Mary. Usually you don't get to, but we got to. This is one of the older buildings on the island, and so that was really, really cool to get to stay in it. I had last year I went to Camp Colorado, and my friend Owen was I met him there. He lives in Michigan or Illinois. And anyways, I met him back a year later at Hog Island, and we were able to dorm together in the Queen Mary, which is really cool to get to see him again after not seeing him for 1 year. This picture also kind of shows the island a little bit, and just the trees and such, and you can see the beach to the left. We hung out there a lot, just constantly glassing, especially from that upper left deck, constantly looking for birds and such. And somebody would be like, "I found something in the spotting scope," and we'd all rush and look through the spotting scope, which was really cool, just to be able to do that for hours on end. Next slide, please. These are some more views of the island. The left one is of the view from the porch. You could see Owen's spotting scope in that one, and we would just look out across the bay, looking for seabirds and whatnot that might be traveling across it. And on the right is just a view of the island from the Queen Mary's deck. There was a really pretty field that we just kind of ate under the tent for all our meals, which were really just delicious and fresh. A lot of them were made from local ingredients grown in Maine, so it was all really delicious. Next slide, please. This is a view of one of the specimen boxes. The below the Queen Mary, the bottom level, is a giant specimen lab with hundreds of specimens similar to this. And I included this picture just because it was really cool to be able to handle these and get an idea of how big the birds are. And then they had a lot of eastern species too, which I've never seen before. So it was really cool to get to look at those and handle them. Next slide. This is another view of the boxes. I thought this one was pretty interesting with all the little warblers. It was so cool just to hold them, and they're just smaller than your hand. And then to be able to compare them side by side, because I have trouble with warblers sometimes. They're tricky little guys. So it's pretty cool just to get to see them and compare them like that. Next slide. And this is a view of a passenger pigeon. I included that one just because I thought that was a really cool bird. The fact that they have an extinct specimen I thought was really unique and kind of just showed the quality and level of this specimen lab, which was on the island, which is super cool. Next slide. This is some puffins. The first field trip we took was out to Eastern Egg Rock. We took up one of the camp boats out a couple miles out of the bay, constantly looking for seabirds and whatnot. But then we got to the island and they let us out to the blinds. The whole while, all these terns are attacking us because they have their eggs on the ground. like in the trail sometimes. So you have to like really watch your feet so you don't step on the eggs and break them. And so we've got all these terns attacking us, and a couple of them hit me on the head, which was pretty cool, even though it hurt. But then they let us into these blinds, and then slowly all the seabirds started to come back and get comfortable with us being around. And so the puffins were probably one of the main highlights, just because they're so unique and iconic in a way. Next slide. This is just another view of the puffins. I really love these guys because they've got the really big orange beak, and they're nothing like what we have out here. Next slide. This is the guillemot. It's probably my favorite over the puffins even. They're just so fun. We celebrated International Guillemot Appreciation Day a little bit early. It was developed a while back, but anyways, the some researchers felt that the guillemots weren't getting enough appreciation and that the puffins were getting all the attention. So they created International Guillemot Appreciation Day, which was so much fun. We all dressed up like guillemots kind of. But these guys are just so much fun. They had so much character just hopping around with their little red feet and flying around. And I think they're just slick with the black and white wings. Next slide. Another guillemot picture, just hanging out on some rocks. Next slide. This is a common tern. These were the ones that were attacking us for the most part. They were the most common tern on the island. They were really not afraid of us at all. They were very aggressive, but it was cool because they would just hang out and yell at us. There was one camp tern that would go and sit on top of the interns' heads at the island, the researchers doing work. And so there was camp tern, but they were just all over the place and nesting everywhere. But it was cool to get to see terns like that because we don't really get those in Pagosa especially. Next slide. And then this is just that's Camp Turn, just hanging out. He was just screaming at us while we were eating our lunch, just hanging out. And I thought that was a real funny picture with his tongue sticking out like that. Next slide. This is Franklin's goal. Along with the other elk kids and turns, there were a bunch of goals which we didn't get to see. And this was another photo from in the blind on Eastern Egg Rock, which was just I just love goals. They have so much character and personality, and this one's really pretty, just with the black head and whatnot. Next slide. This is a roseate tern. They're endangered, unfortunately, but it was really cool to be able to see these birds. They're very closely monitored on the island. Every single nest is meticulously watched, and they track all sorts of data and such with that. But it was really cool because I think there was about 2 dozen or so nesting pairs, maybe probably less on the island. So it's really cool to get to be able to see them just because they're declining and whatnot. But which is really sad. But it was awesome to be able to see them because these ones were probably my favorite, just because they're like identifying all these turns on the wing can be difficult. But these ones just like are neon white almost, and you just watch them, and they're just like so beautiful and clean. It's just awesome. Next slide. This is a female common eider. She was just hanging out on the rocks. We're not quite sure why. We think she might have had a nest. But again, another really cool seabird that we don't get here. And like the males are pretty, but I think the females are really pretty in their own way, just because they're so unique. Next slide. This is the Arctic tern. They were probably the least common on the island, although they're not endangered, at least recognized to be so. These ones were really cool just because we were at the very southern end of their range, and they were really pretty with just their pink bill. Next slide. This is kind of an idea of what was the ground looked like on the island. The red terracotta is the trail, so the chicks in that egg are like right in or next to the trail. That really shows how much you have to watch your feet. The one on the left is actually an egg with a chick hatching, which was really cool to watch that just slowly pecking out. And then the right is a Arctic tern chick, well, that had hatched a couple days ago, and there were different levels of chicks running around the island. They grow really fast when they're young, so even at like 4 days, they're running around and such. So we'd see little chicks running through the grass, which was fun. Next slide. This is the, oh, why did I forget? What goal is this? This is the herring gull. We this was on the mainland day, I believe. We the second day we took a field trip in mainland, which was really cool because that was just mostly eastern species. So we got to listen and we heard a lot of different warblers singing, which in Pagosa we don't have very many. So it was really cool to be able to listen. And there were so many knowledgeable people, and they'd be like, "That's such and such warbler," and you'd be like, "How do you know?" And it was really cool just to be able to learn those calls and such. But we went to fish ladder, which was just like a spot where all the fish run up the stream, the alewives, and the herring gulls were just like chowing down on them, hanging out on the rocks. So these guys were cool. They were probably the most personality out of all the gulls, just because they were like really loud and ate a bunch of fish and such, and kind of would just hang out around people more, which was fun. Next slide. This is a singing northern parula. It's definitely more of an eastern species. So it was really cool to get to see him, and he was just hanging out, and it was really fun because he was just singing to defend his territory. So just to be able to listen to him and then spot him through the trees and such, and I think this is just a really beautiful warbler. Next slide. We did a really cool banding demonstration. We had a call for the warblers and such playing on below a mist net, and then they'd get upset because there was another singing male bird in their territory. So they'd come to check it out, and then they'd fly into the mist net. This is a black-throated green warbler we caught in one of the mist nets. We actually had a really crazy day with the mist nets. I think we ended up catching 8 or so different species in about an hour or so, which was really cool. And so it was fun to watch the banding process too, and all the data they collect with all that, and then also just to be able to see the birds really up close like that. Next slide. This is a female purple finch. I included this one just because this was a species I had been hoping to see for a while, being familiar with the Western Cassin's finch. So it was really fun to be able to see that one at the feeders because I've been trying to see that one for a while. Next slide. And then this is the blue jay. I think they're just so beautiful. It's probably just because I don't get to see them very often in Pagosa, but something about them is just really cool and unique that I just love. Next slide. And then this is a yellow-bellied sapsucker. On the inland day, we found a nest of one of those, which is really cool to see that because we have the red-bellied sap or red-naped sapsucker in Pagosa, so it was kind of cool to see its eastern counterpart and then compare them. But they were just going in and out of this nest for a while, and we just sat and watched it, which was really fun just to watch it flying with an insect and then feed it. And you could hear the babies; they'd get louder when it was close, and then they'd get really loud when it was in there, and then it would fly off and they'd get quiet. And then both the parents were just coming and going like crazy, which is really fun. Next slide. And then that's the end. This is a picture on the island of the bell. They rang the bell for meals and whatnot. It's kind of just iconic of the island, but it was really cool. The whole experience was very unique, being on the ocean and out east, being able to see a bunch of different species. But it was also fun to be able to reconnect with friends and make new friends. The first day I got back, they created a group chat, and I swear there were probably like 400 messages in the first hour, and so it was just really fun to be able to connect and meet other young birders because Pagosa is pretty remote, and I have a couple friends, but not like these guys. These guys were all really avid birders like me, so it was really fun to be able to connect with them about something that I love so much.
Thank you. Carol, shall we take questions if anybody has questions for Peyton? Not sure. We have a question in the chat. Did you take the photos?
I did. This winter, last winter, I guess that would have been 23, purchased a little single body Canon SX70 that I've been having a lot of fun with just to document birds and then just get into photography slowly, which is really fun.
Very terrific.
How did you get interested in birding?
So I had a teacher who kind of introduced it to me through one of his naturalist courses. We really focused on birds. And then I kind of connected with some other local birders. One guy working for Audubon Rockies, Keith Bruno. He's really been a mentor for a number of years now. So just having those mentors and such. And then also it's kind of been a slow build that like was like sort of an interest, but now has turned into an obsession. Um, so that's just really cool. And then meeting other people and such. And then I think eBird really helps with that a lot, just being able to track checklists and such fairly easily.
Any more questions from the audience here live? Carol, any more questions online?
Zoomers, got any other questions for Peyton? Lots of admiration for the photos.
Everybody here in the audience really enjoyed it, Peyton. Thank you for coming on.
Here is one more question from
course.
us.
Thank you guys for the scholarship.
Where else would you look for birding?
Like places to go, or like just like in the
Places
future, like
or personal
goals
goals?
with birding in general.
I think either one.
Just to like really stay interested in it. And get other people into it. And I'd like to do some sort of conservation stuff with it. I just don't really know how that applies with me getting out of high school and such. Seems like I have less and less time on my hands. But it would be really cool to get involved in these conservation projects similar to Eastern Egg Rock, what they're doing with the puffins and terns. So finding opportunities like that would be really cool. But I think educating people is a big one. So probably just like reaching out to people and trying to get them interested to help focus on conservation stuff mainly.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate your coming to talk with us and are glad you had a great time. Looks like you had good weather too. I didn't see any rain.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, thank you, Peyton, on behalf of everybody here at Boulder County Audubon.